I've made a lot of mistakes, like the kind that still make me cringe at 2 a.m. for no reason. The kind where you look back and think, did I really do that? And yeah, I did. And honestly, I've learned more from those moments than I ever did from the ones that went right. Because falling short of who you are or who you thought you'd be will teach you things a win will never teach you. It's humbling, it's messy, and if you let it, it's where you start to really grow. I used to think learning the hard way made me the problem. Like if I didn't get it right the first time around, I was behind somehow or doing it all wrong. But now I see it differently. I just collected my lessons in real time. Every bad decision, every ego trip, every relationship I stayed in for way too long, they all built the version of me who finally knows better. So, welcome back to Chasing Stability. And today we're talking about the kind of wisdom that doesn't come from easy, the kind you earn through heartbreak and regret and a little bit of chaos. This one's from the girl who really had to learn the hard way. See, there's something kind of beautiful about realizing that your worst behavior didn't ruin you, it refined you. You start to see how those moments of what was I even thinking were actually building your awareness and your empathy, your standards, and so on. You start forgiving yourself for the things you didn't know then because you're finally living in the proof that you've changed. And maybe that's the real glow up no one talks about. Not the new job, not the healed skin or the better body or whatever great things happening. But the moment you stop running from the old you and start learning from her instead, because she wasn't your downfall, right? She was your foundation. She's the reason you know better now. And if you ask me, that's the best kind of redemption that there will ever be. College taught me a lot of things, but honestly, very few of them were actually taught on the syllabus. It was less about textbooks and more about trial and error. Like, no one tells you that half of your 20s will be spent unlearning what you normalized back when your frontal lobe wasn't developed. The people you tolerated, the red flags you romanticized, the situationships you called love. I thought I was just like living the best life ever in college, right? But looking back, I was totally just like majoring in emotional turbulence and complete chaos with a minor in self sabotage. It's funny because I remember thinking I was so grown. Like I had a meal plan and I had the fake ID and like opinions about every single thing that I knew nothing about. I had it together. Sure. But deep down, I was so insecure. Everything I did was filtered through this need to be liked by guys, by friends, by people who I didn't even really know or care about. And it wasn't because I was shallow, it's because I didn't know who I was yet. I didn't know how to be okay with myself without someone else validating it. And I think about that sometimes, how when you're so focused on being seen, you miss the people who see you clearly. There was this one guy, probably one of the good ones, maybe even the one, who showed up for me in every quiet, genuine way that mattered. He cared, he listened, he didn't play games, and I couldn't recognize it then because I was too busy chasing the validation that looked shinier and louder, harder to get. He wanted something real, and I wanted to prove something, mostly to myself. So I let him drift away, convincing myself he just wasn't exciting enough, when in reality, he was peace. And I wasn't ready for that yet. Looking back, that was possibly one of the biggest lessons I learned from that situation. Sometimes the love you miss out on isn't the one that got away, it's the one you weren't healthy enough to like hold on to. Because when your self worth is low, even good love feels uncomfortable. You confuse calm with boring and stability for distance. And then one day you realize that is the kind of love, you realize the kind of love you pushed away was actually everything that you're praying for now. College taught me that too. That self involvement and insecurity can cost you things you don't realize until way later when you're healed. And honestly, that's what college really was. One long, like, mirror held up to my worst habits. It showed me how much I overexerted, how often I ignored my gut, and how easily I confused chaos for chemistry. It was messy and dramatic and full of lessons I didn't know I was learning. But every mistake, every mischance, every person I hurt, it all forced me to grow. And in a weird way, I'm very grateful for that time because the girl who learned the hard way, she's the reason I finally learned what real love and real peace and real self worth actually is supposed to look like. Somewhere between heartbreak and healing, I hit this phase where I genuinely thought I was the emotionally evolved one, when really I was just the loud one about my pain. Like I'd see someone doing the same toxic shit that I was doing to other people. And I thought I had the right to be the one that was like, oh no, not on my watch, except it wasn't coming from a protective place. It was coming from my ego, from the part of me that still hadn't forgiven the people who broke me, or from myself for letting them. When you've been really hurt, it's wild how easy it is to start thinking you've earned the right to be messy too. You justify it by saying, well, at least I'm honest, or they deserved it, when really you're just passing the pain around like hot potato. And I did that. I was the girl who threw stones while standing in a glass house, a very big glass house. I called people out. I yelled about their bad behavior. And I told myself it was to be righteous. But truthfully, it was just projection. It was me trying to control someone else's chaos because I couldn't control my own. I think the hardest thing to admit is that sometimes we become the very thing we swore we'd never be, not because we're bad, but because we've been broken. Pain makes you so delusional in all of that way. You start believing revenge will bring closure, or that exposing someone's flaws will make you feel better about your own, but it never does. All it really does is keep you stuck in the same cycle, convincing yourself you're standing up for yourself when you're really just pushing yourself down further and further. There was a version of me who didn't want to see anyone happy if I wasn't happy. I would never have admitted that back then, but sadly, it's true. I was angry. I was jealous. I was unhealed. I took it out on people who did not deserve to have it taken out on. And that's the thing about being broken by someone else. It gives you the perfect excuse to break other people too. But at the same time, you have to wake up and realize that the person who hurt you isn't even around anymore. And you're still carrying this pain into everyone else's story. That was the turning point for me, realizing that being the crazy one didn't make me powerful. It made me look stupid, and it made me really tired. And that healing wasn't about never being messy again. It was about learning to catch myself before I hurt other people the way that I had been hurt prior. Because growing doesn't mean pretending you never crossed the line. It means you learned why you did, and you make sure that you never, ever do it again, or at least you try not to. It's when you start realizing that growth isn't about proving you've changed, it's about quietly taking accountability for when you didn't know better. That's the season I call the apology tour. And it's not always about sending the text or reopening the old wounds. Sometimes it's just about finally telling the truth to yourself. Because when I started really healing, I had to face some things that honestly I would have rather not. The times I made people feel small because I was hurting, the friendships that I ruined because I needed to be right more than I needed to be kind, the people I loved poorly because I was too busy trying to be loved back. It's not fun to sit in that mirror, but it's necessary because you can't build self awareness on top of denial. There were moments when I wanted to justify it all, to say, well, if they hadn't done this, I wouldn't have done that. But healing doesn't let you play the victim forever. Eventually, it asks you to own your part, not to shame yourself, but to set yourself free. Because accountability isn't punishment, it's release. It's looking at your old self and saying, I get it now. You didn't know. But we're not doing that anymore. And honestly, the hardest apologies are the ones no one will ever hear. The silent ones you whisper under your breath when you finally understand what your actions cost someone else, or the ones you owe yourself for the times you let people walk all over you, or when you kept breaking your own heart trying to prove your worth. That's the part of healing no one really glamorizes. The part where growth feels like grief because you're mourning who you were, even if you're proud of who you're becoming. But that's where the real transformation starts to happen. When you stop defending the version of yourself that hurt people and start protecting the one who's learning how not to. That's when forgiveness starts to feel real, not just for the people you hurt, but also for you. But some people won't want to let you forgive yourself for the wrong things you did. They like you better when you're the villain in their story. It gave them something to talk about. And the moment you start healing, they lose their favorite version of you, the broken one who made sense in their narrative, the one who can be blamed for everything they're now not facing. You can apologize and grow and change and evolve, and some people will still never let you outlive the version of you that hurt them. And that's not your problem anymore. Because if you've already done the work, God's already forgave you for it all. And his grace outweighs their gossip every single time. You don't owe anyone your constant guilt to prove your growth because your reputation is just the highlight reel of their lowest moments. Okay. And it's only told through someone else's lens. But your character, that's the story God sees when no one else is looking. It's who you are when no one else is clapping. It's what you do when the world isn't watching. The world will always have opinions about, they'll remember the mistakes, but not the moments you learned from them. They'll quote the chapter that they caught you in, but never read the pages that came before or after when you were healing or better. But the beautiful part is God did. He always reads ahead and he already knows how the story will turn out. And he kept choosing you anyway. For a while, I tried so hard to fix that, to prove I wasn't who I used to be. But healing doesn't require a PR campaign to the rest of the world that you hurt. You can't convince people of your peace. You can only live it. Because when God restores something, it doesn't need defending, it just needs to be protected. At some point, you have to stop defending your name and start protecting your growth. You stop performing better and you just become it. Because when you truly change, you don't need to talk about it. Your energy and your grace speak it for you. So if they're still gossiping, let them. Let them misinterpret the silence. Let them hold on to that outdated version of you while you rebuild and build something so much better, newer, softer, more real. Because the people who truly know you and your heart, they already see the difference. And the ones who don't wouldn't believe that you've changed anyway. And at the end of the day, that's the only reputation that matters, yours and what God thinks of you, right? If there's one thing I've learned from doing life the hard way, it's that you can't hate every single version of yourself that you've been in the past and still expect to grow. Because even the messiest parts of you, the impulsive, the jealousness, the defensive, the self sabotaging one, all of them, they were all just trying to survive with what they knew at the time. You didn't need shame, you needed guidance. You didn't need punishment, you needed grace. And the biggest lesson that I learned is that you can rebuild your life from any version of yourself that you've been. You were never too far gone to start over again. God's not intimidated by your bad decisions. He already factored them into the whole big outsource of your life. And somehow he still uses every wrong turn to lead you right where you're supposed to be. There's this peace that comes when you finally stop trying to outrun who you used to be, when you can look at your old self and say, you were doing your best with what you had. And I am proud of you for surviving long enough to learn better and outgrow it. That's when healing stops being this big dramatic reveal and starts being a quiet kind of freedom. The kind where you can see your own progress and actually believe it's real. If I could talk to my younger self, I think I'd tell her to stop rushing to become the version of her that has it all together, because she doesn't exist and she's never going to. The goal isn't perfection, it's progression. Every mistake you make, every heartbreak you heal from, every time you get humbled, it's building something. It's teaching you discernment, it's teaching you empathy, and it's giving you depth. You can't become grounded without first being shaken. And maybe that's the lesson I'd want anyone listening to this to hear. The girl who learned the hard way isn't broken. She's wise. She's the one who turned her worst moments into her best material. She's the one who stopped chasing approval and started chasing purpose. And she's the proof that redemption doesn't require perfection, just willingness. Because at the end of the day, every lesson, every loss, every fail, everything that you can think of, it's all shaping you into someone who can handle what's next with softer hands and a stronger heart. And maybe that's what growing up really is. It's learning to thank your past self for her mistakes instead of resenting her for them. There's something sacred about realizing your story didn't end where you thought it would. That the version of you who couldn't forgive herself, she actually became the reason you learned how to extend grace in the first place. It's also wild to me how God works through all those little cracks, how he takes the parts of you that felt too broken to ever mean anything ever again and somehow builds a foundation that's stronger because of them. For a long time, I thought redemption meant cleaning up the mess. Like I had to earn my way back to being good. But now I know redemption is just God saying, I never stopped seeing you as good in the first place. It's not about pretending it never happened. It's about letting him rewrite the meaning of it. Because what once felt like punishment was really preparation. And every failure was feedback. Every loss was a lesson. And every delay was divine timing in disguise. I used to look back at certain seasons of my life and feel nothing but regret. The things I said, the people I hurt, the opportunities I wasted. But now I see God's fingerprints all over those moments because without them, I wouldn't have the humility or the discernment or the peace that I have now. He let me fall just enough to find him again. And I think that that's pretty beautiful. And no matter how far off track you think you've gone, grace always knows how to find you. And here's the thing. The girl who learned the hard way, that that same girl, she's not bitter anymore. She's not ashamed. She's grateful because every stumble made her softer and more grounded in who she actually is. She learned to love herself not because she finally got everything right and everything she wanted, but because she finally understood that getting it wrong didn't make her unworthy. When you get to that place, you stop needing validation from everyone else and you start just reaching for peace instead of chasing it. You start forgiving quicker and you love deeper and you're holding space for people who are still in their own learning season, making all the bad decisions because you remember what it felt like to be them. So maybe that's what redemption really is. Not starting over, but starting from experience, not erasing the past, but honoring it as proof that you made it through. Because when God brings you full circle, it's never to shame you, it's to show you what He can do with even your worst mistakes. And once you see that, you stop wishing you learned the easy way. You start thanking Him that you learned at all. So if you're the girl who's still learning the hard way right now in this season, I hope this reminds you that you're not behind, you're not broken, you're just in process. The version of you that's crying over lessons she swore she'd already learned, she's doing the hardest part. She's growing in real time. And one day I think you'll look back and realize these moments that you're in, the ones that feel heavy and confusing and unfair, were actually building your wisdom and your strength and ultimately your empathy. Keep going, even when it's messy. Keep trusting, even when it doesn't make sense, because God's not done with you yet. And you're not being punished, you're being prepared. And one day you'll thank him for every door that closed and every mistake that rerouted you, because without them, you wouldn't have become the version of you that will finally know peace when you grow through it all. I want to thank you all for listening and for sharing this space with me and for letting me be a small part of your growth in your day to day. If this episode made you feel anything at all, please share it with someone who's maybe in their own in between, or post it to your story, or just share it maybe with a group chat, whatever. Because we all are growing constantly. And the only way that we grow this community is by sharing it and helping everyone push through. Make sure you're following wherever you're listening to this podcast right now and on social medias too, over on Instagram and TikTok, so you never miss an episode or what they're going to be about. I love you all so much. Thank you so much again for tuning in today. This is Chasing Stability, and I'll meet you in the in-between next Tuesday.